What is going on, everyone? It is time to talk about... Alright, hold on. This is normally where I would say something like the state's nickname. But today we're talking about South Dakota, and they have quite a few. I've heard them called the Artesian State. I've heard them called the Coyote State, the Sunshine State, which that one doesn't make sense to me. They're awfully far north to be called the Sunshine State. Some people have called it the Blizzard State, which makes more sense. They have harsh winters. But the official nickname of South Dakota is the Mount Rushmore State. And that one makes a whole lot of sense because that's all you ever think about when someone says South Dakota. Okay, maybe the Badlands or Sturgis, but mostly Mount Rushmore. South Dakota is a great place to visit and see some sights. But before you jump on a freight train to make a new life in the Dakotas, you should watch my top 10 reasons not to move to South Dakota.
Good ideas. Dakota States United. I think it would be a great idea for the Dakota States to unite instead of separating, because both of them are rural. According to research, it was actually one state, but because of issues, they ended up separating. Apparently, there was issues as to whether Pierre or Bismarck was supposed to be the capital city. So initially they separated, and then Bismarck became the capital city of North Dakota. Pierre became the city. Bismarck became the capital city of North Dakota. Pierre became the city of South Dakota. But even though South Dakota is much more developed, much more popular, as much as it's rural, but Bismarck and Menden formed the metropolitan municipality. So I think they belong together. They could just come together, become one province, become one state, Dakota. And then there'll be 49 states in the US instead of 50, because the US is a very big country. It's got 50 states. So if Dakota unites, it will just be one state. That's just my opinion, because according to research, they are both rural. I've never set foot in the states, but I've been doing some research. I find that no, they are both rural. Not too many people go there, especially the northeast. The northeast even health there. South is much better. So maybe make them one state instead of separating them.
Want to hear about one of the most underrated states the United States has to offer? Keep watching. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to World According to Briggs and a video about South Dakota. South Dakota is right here. It's in between North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Boredom, mind-numbing Boredom, and Minnesota. They have just under 900,000 residents with about 77,000 square miles of area. South Dakota is ranked 17th in area and 46th in population. In other words, the Mount Rushmore state isn't too crowded. So there's plenty of room for you if you're thinking about calling this place home.
Now, you can hear what they're saying, that it doesn't have much population. So if it just becomes one state, then it will have more population because they will count all the numbers. It will still be a rural state, but it will be better if they're joined together, and then Bismarck and Pierre will form a major metropolitan municipality. I think they belong together and being separated. That's what I think.
90% of kids don't know how.
Sometimes you get deceived by this thing of dividing. You find that divisions give people wrong ideas. You think I'm your best friend because both me and you come from the same side of Dakota. Only to find that your best friend is on the other side, on the other Dakota. So if we unite and become one state, you'll find each other. You'll find better people to hang out with than those who come from your state who might not be good company for you.
Comes with their healthcare is below the national average as far as cost, housing, utilities, and transportation. Number 6, a state of nature. South Dakota is one of those states that the outdoor types flock to. Hiking, camping, just about anything outdoors, including hunting and especially fishing, are huge in this state. South Dakota has miles and miles of unspoiled natural beauty. It's like this outdoor paradise. It has the iconic attractions like Mount Rushmore, the Badlands National Park, the Black Hills, the Missouri River, and tons of trails to explore. This is a weird story, but it kind of shows how sparsely populated and wide open this place is. Back in the 1950s, 2 girls were on their way to a party. They never showed up, and they were never seen or heard from again. Neither was their car. Flash forward to the late 90s, they found their car in a creek right off the road. There are so few people in this state that they just didn't realize that a foot under the water in this creek was this car with these 2 girls that had been there for, close to 50 years at this point. I forget the exact number of years, but it was like 40 or 50 years, something like that. It was crazy that there's so few people here and there's so much land that they just didn't know these girls were here. I always thought that was amazing. Anyway, there's almost 13,000 acres of land.
That's why I think they should just be one state, not separated. They belong together. So sometimes you get deceived by stuff like that, but I think if you make arrangements, Just make it one state instead of separating it. Apparently, South Dakota rurality it's more popular, so they belong together. That's just my opinion.
1903 is part of the Louisiana Purchase. When white settlers arrived and started setting up shop, the local Sioux people weren't happy about the arrangement. They had been promised this land in previous treaties. This is how it worked. It's like someone showing up at your house that you don't know. It's the house you own, and they start telling you that you're going to have to move to a new house someplace else. You're like, okay, dude, not sure who you are, but fine. As long as I don't have to deal with you or your family, I'll...
So, it was an area the issues that apparently in the North Dakota there are some much more bigger issues than that. We'll hear them just now.
Can you pick out North Dakota on a blank U.S. map? Did you know only 30% of Americans can? Now, what I find strange about this, 44% of Canadians can pick out North Dakota on a blank U.S. map. It's not even their country. But they also think it's okay to have potato chips that taste like ketchup, so they're all kinds of screwed up. Today, we're looking at the results of a survey we did where we listed 30 reasons why North Dakota isn't a good place to live. These 30 reasons were reasons people most often gave when asked why they don't like living in North Dakota. We took the top 10 answers that were chosen most often. One really strange thing about this is most of the reasons had to do with Mother Nature. There's a lot of good things going on in North Dakota. They rank 4th in the nation for infrastructure, 16th.
It's very much criticized, so it's more like a part of South Dakota. So I think they should just be together. Some things just don't deserve to be separated, some things belong together.
If stream starts howling across that part of the country, you could feel it in North Dakota. Number 8, out of control wildlife. This is kind of a big deal, especially if you're moving from a city. Wildlife scares city folks. That's all there is to it. But for most city folks, driving through a really dangerous neighborhood isn't that scary to them, and it should be. Human beings are far more dangerous and more likely to attack than wildlife. But North Dakota does have some wildlife issues. They have wolves, bison, moose, coyotes, all the typical things that could attack you. Now, those things rarely happen, but it is a fear that people have, and it's a reason they don't move to states that are like North Dakota and Wyoming and Montana. Some people really are afraid of that. But the biggest problem you will have with wildlife in North Dakota is running into them on the road. People hit deer constantly here, and occasionally you get stopped by a herd of buffalo that just decided to stand in the middle of the road. You just kind of got to keep your head on a swivel when you're driving around.
So it's clear that North Dakota is much wilder. The wildlife is just uncontrollable. So I think they should just be one state, not separate. That's just my opinion. Instead of comparing the two, rather make them one. Because why South Dakota is taking to be much better. Let it lead.
In this video, we're going to take a look at why so many people move to South Dakota instead of North Dakota. And I promise you, it's not the typical reasons you'd expect, like crime and politics. South Dakota and North Dakota are solid red states and both have very similar weather. Nice summers and springs with bitterly cold winters at times. Their crime rates are both in the mid-20s when ranking against all 50 states. The poverty rate is close, with South Dakota being a touch higher. It's 13.6% versus 11.9%. Now, South Dakota is definitely growing faster. At the 2020 census, both states grew by 15%, with South Dakota being 0.8% higher. But then there was a shift. In 2021, South Dakota grew by 1.7%, while North Dakota grew by 0.15%. And in 2022, South Dakota grew by 2.8%, while North Dakota didn't grow. So why is South Dakota growing so much faster than their neighbor to the north? That's what we're going to look at today. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take...
So typically, it's just Dakota. The US is a very big country, it's got 50 states, so if Dakota unites, it will just be 49. That's just my opinion. Rather unite them. I know it will be a process, but if you do something for the right reasons, then it will end up well. There's nothing better than unity. There's nothing better than unity is always better than divisions, because divisions cause unnecessary quarrels.